I earned a six-figure salary for 11 years. When the job ended, I had $11,000. I never told my son either of those numbers. Most men do not. We perform financial confidence for the people who look up to us. We give advice we have not earned the right to give. We stand in front of our sons and our colleagues and our younger brothers, and we speak with a certainty that has nothing to do with our actual numbers. And the people who trust us most never find out the truth, until it is too late to do anything with it. I am 84 years old. My heart is running at 38%. I have been carrying this specific truth for 30 years, and I am done carrying it privately. David, this letter is for you, but I suspect it is for someone else too. Before I go any further, I want to ask the people listening to this today one question. Is there someone in your life who looks up to you financially? A son, a younger colleague, a brother, someone who assumes you have things more figured out than you actually do? Write yes or no in the comments, just yes or no, because what I am about to tell David is something I think you need to hear too. David, I want to talk to you about money. Not the way I talked to you about money when you were growing up, not the lectures about saving and responsibility and the value of a dollar that I delivered with the confidence of a man who had no business delivering them given the state of his own finances at the time. I want to talk to you about it honestly, the way I should have talked to you about it 20 years ago when you were starting your career and I was still performing the role of a man who had things figured out. I did not have things figured out. I had a good salary and a convincing presentation, and a level of financial confidence that was almost entirely disconnected from my actual financial reality. And I passed some of that disconnect on to you. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but I stood in front of you at 23 years old, starting your first real job, and I talked about money with an authority I had not earned, and a certainty I had not justified, and I gave you the performance instead of the truth. This is the truth. In 1994, you came to me for advice about your first salary negotiation. You had been offered a position at a firm in Portland. Good firm, solid work. The kind of opportunity I would have taken at your age without hesitation. The salary they offered was $62,000. You asked me if that was good. I said yes. I said it was a strong starting point. I said negotiate for 68 and settle for 65, and make sure you ask about the bonus structure and the review timeline. You did exactly that. You got $64,000 and a 6-month review, and you called me from Portland that evening, and you were proud, and I was proud, and it was a good conversation. What I did not tell you is that at the same time I was giving you that advice, I had approximately $14,000 in savings. I was 50 years old. I had been earning a 6-figure salary for 11 years, $14,000. I did not tell you that because telling you that would have required admitting something I was not ready to admit. That the man giving you financial advice was himself in a financial situation that did not reflect 40 years of earning and working and planning. I was 50 years old with $14,000 and a mortgage and 3 children and a lifestyle that required my salary to keep arriving every month without interruption because there was almost nothing underneath it if it stopped. And I stood there and gave you advice about salary negotiation with the full confidence of a man who had it handled. I am sorry for that. Not for the advice itself. The advice was probably fine. Negotiate up, understand the bonus structure, know your review timeline. That is all reasonable. I am sorry for the performance of competence I gave you instead of the honest conversation you deserved. Because the honest conversation would have gone differently. It would have gone like this. David, I want to tell you something about money that I have not figured out myself, but that I can see clearly enough to warn you about. The salary is not the thing. The salary is just the number. What matters is the gap between the number and what you keep. And that gap is the thing almost nobody talks about honestly, because talking about it honestly requires admitting things that are uncomfortable. I earn a good salary. I keep almost none of it. Not because I am irresponsible in any obvious way. Because I have built a life over 20 years that costs almost exactly what I earn to maintain. And every time the salary went up, the life adjusted to match it. And now the life requires the salary to keep arriving every month, and I have almost nothing set aside for the month it does not. That is what I should have told you at 23. Instead, I told you to negotiate for 68 and settle for 65. The second thing I want to tell you is about the story I told myself for 30 years about why the savings rate was low. The story changed depending on the year. In my 30s, the story was that we were in the building phase. The mortgage was new. The children were young. The expenses were high for good reasons. Once we got through this phase, things would settle down, and we would save more aggressively. In my 40s, the story was that the children's education was the priority. Private school fees, then university. Significant and legitimate expenses that would end eventually, and when they ended, we would redirect that money into savings. In my early 50s, the story was that the firm was going through a difficult period, and this was not the right time to make major changes, and once things stabilized, we would address the savings properly. In my late 50s, there was no story left. Just a man who was 3 years from the retirement he had been planning for 20 years, looking at a savings account that contained $11,000, and understanding for the first time with full clarity that the story had always been a story, not a plan. A story. A narrative I told myself to make the present feel like a temporary condition rather than my actual financial life. The building phase never ended. The education expenses were replaced by other expenses. The firm stabilized, and the savings did not change. The story just kept getting updated, and the savings account just kept not growing. Here is my first question for today. Think about the story you are telling yourself right now about why your savings rate is what it is. Not the practical reasons. The story underneath the practical reasons. The narrative that makes the present feel temporary. Write it in the comments if you are honest enough. Just one sentence. The story you are telling yourself right now. I will tell you what mine was for 30 years. Next year things will settle down and we will sort it out properly. 30 years. The same sentence. Every year. David. I want to tell you about the 8 years between me giving you that salary advice in 1994 and the day in 2002 when the firm restructured and my position was eliminated. In those 8 years I received 3 salary increases. Each one felt significant at the time. Each one was consumed by the life within 12 months. Not on anything dramatic. Not on anything I could point to and say that was the mistake. That was the thing I should not have bought or done or agreed to. Just the ordinary ongoing expansion of a life that treated every increase in income as permission to increase in cost. New car when the lease came up and we upgraded because we could. Holiday that was slightly longer and slightly more expensive than the previous one because the children were older and we wanted to give them the experience. The kitchen renovation that had been planned for years and that finally happened because the bonus that year was good. None of those things were wrong individually. Together, they were the mechanism. Together, they were what consumed every raise for 8 years and left me at 61 with a salary that had just been eliminated and $11,000 between me and a retirement I was not ready for. I want to tell you about the conversation I had with your mother the week after I lost the job. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, not angry, not panicked, just very still in the way she became still when something required her full attention. She said, "Harold, tell me what we actually have." I told her. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "All right, what do we do now? Not what happened, not how did we get here, not what were you thinking. What do we do now?" I have never loved her more than I did in that moment, and I have never been more ashamed than I was in that moment. Not because we were in trouble. We found our way through. It was difficult, and it required changes that were uncomfortable and that we should have made 20 years earlier, but we found our way through. I was ashamed because she deserved to have been told the truth 20 years earlier. She deserved a husband who sat down with her at 35 and said, "Margaret, I need to show you what our finances actually look like. Not the surface, the actual numbers. And I need us to make some decisions together about what we want this to look like in 30 years. She never got that conversation. She got a husband who ran the Saturday morning numbers alone and presented a surface of managed competence and asked her to trust that things were in hand. They were not in hand. They were in story, and she deserved to know the difference. Here is my second question for today. Does the person who shares your financial life know what the actual numbers look like? Not the surface, not the managed presentation, the real numbers. Write yes or no in the comments, just yes or no, because if the answer is no, then you are doing to them exactly what I did to Margaret for 30 years. And the kitchen table conversation is coming whether you initiate it or whether life initiates it for you. You get to choose which one. David. Here is the last thing I want to say. I am not telling you this to make you worry about me. I am all right. I have enough. The house is paid for and I have what I need, and the last years with your mother were genuinely good in ways that had nothing to do with money. I am telling you this because you are 53 years old, and somewhere in the middle of the years that decide everything financially, and I do not know what your numbers look like, and I am not asking. But I want you to know what mine looked like at 53, and I want you to have the honest conversation with yourself and with whoever shares your financial life that I never had until a woman from Human Resources sat across from me with a folder of paperwork. Have it today. Not because things are bad, because having it now means you get to choose the outcome. Waiting until you have to have it means the outcome chooses you. I chose to wait. The outcome chose me. I love you, David. I should have said that more. I should have said a lot of things more. This is one of them. To everyone listening today, you know if there is a conversation you have been avoiding about money, with yourself, with your partner, with the actual numbers rather than the story you have been telling about the numbers. Have it today. Not because it will be comfortable, because the alternative is a kitchen table conversation 20 years from now that starts with someone who loves you saying, "Tell me what we actually have," and you not having a better answer than I did. Leave me a comment. Tell me the story you are telling yourself right now about why the savings are what they are. Just one sentence. I read every single one. And if someone you know is performing financial confidence for people who trust him, while the actual numbers tell a completely different story, send this to him. He needs to hear it before the folder of paperwork arrives. There is more to say. I will say it.